so we can capture this. But yeah, if you could just share your name, your artist name, and then what events you're doing now.
Okay, cool. Can I go first?
Yeah, jump in.
Awesome. My name's Keyshawn, and no artist name, just Keyshawn. And for events or for performing events, I actually used to do a lot of Twitch live streaming, like a weekly kind of thing where I brought on people, which Tony was a guest as well before. But I'm not doing that right now. Just have a lot of course load stuff in school. But yeah, I'm not doing any events right now. But I do love live performing, and I did used to do stuff like choir, and performing on stage always made me so happy. So that's my answer. And if I can popcorn it, can I popcorn it, Simon?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, Simon, it's you.
Oh, to me. Well, my name is Simon. I play mostly in a band called the Slants. And as far as events, I'm not doing a ton of events right now because I'm busy on the writing side of things. Although I'm doing an artist in residency program this weekend, so a part of a storytelling festival, and I just wrote a new theater piece that is like goes back and forth between music and storytelling. So that debuts tomorrow night. And so I guess that's the next thing I'm doing.
That's awesome.
You want me to pick someone as
I'll
next?
go.
Okay.
What's up, guys? I'm Corinne, and my artist name is Crinocy, but I'm actually going through kind of a rebranding process right now, and I think I'm going to change my artist name to Mikara. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah, before the pandemic, I was performing all the time, like definitely a few times a month. I was also live streaming before as well through this app called Bigo, but I kind of stopped doing that. But I have a PC coming in, so I do kind of want to get back into live streaming and maybe kind of venture onto Twitch, but that's still a very new area for me, so we'll see.
Hi, my name's Kenneth. I'll go. Corinne, that was awesome. And so nice to see you again. But yeah, my name's Ken. I go by Cade. That's my artist name. And then my main project is called Alex Cade, and that's an EDM project. Before the pandemic, I was drumming a lot for other artists, and it was only like 2019 where I really started pursuing an artist career. And we were hoping for a lot of performances in 2020, but pandemic happened, so that screwed us up. But then we did one live stream concert on Twitch back in November. We got a good chunk of people, and after that, it's just been making music and like doing other things. So hopefully we can get more into either virtual concerts, because Canada is still a lot more closed than America right now. Either more virtual concerts, or hopefully by the end of the year we can book something for ourselves.
I can go next. I'm Tony. I make music under Wind Meets West. I produce for other artists. I'm a singer-songwriter, music educator, producer. Wear a lot of different hats. I've been performing on Twitch since like I think about like a month and a half ago. And yeah, I've just been really experimenting with this year how to reach out to my fans. And one of it is like I'm a live performer. I like doing stuff on the fly. So I've been doing that experience over time. And like I just reached affiliate like a few weeks ago. So that's been really cool. So I'd love to talk. If anyone wants to talk Twitch, I'm happy to share my knowledge about like what you can do with it, how you can monetize it, stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, what's an affiliate? Or, well, I can ask you that later.
Yeah, I think we'll probably be discussing Twitch, but yeah, you should totally.
I guess I can go next if that's all right. Hello, everybody. Ooh, oh, look at this light. I'm by a window. I'm sorry. I think it looks nice. Anyway, hi, everyone. My name's Nathan. I go by he, him, his. My artist name is Nia. It's like Nia in Vietnamese, but it's spelled differently, so non-Asian people can say it. Anyway, in terms of performing, I haven't done any live performing thing, not even performing things, not even the last thing I did that was digital was like that talent show open mic thing that was a part of this this Discord thing that Tony organized. I performed a song called Spooky Bitch. That was that. And since then, I've been, how you say, a mess and done nothing in terms of performing, which is fine, I guess. Anyway, that is that. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll go next. My name's Kathy. I don't really know if I have an artist name. I went by Catherine the Great that one time. Tony and I released a song together. That's the only thing I've ever put out. I'm a songwriter. I also sing, and I'm learning guitar and keyboard and bedroom pop production right now. Yes, that song was great, Tony. And I am doing no events other than the marketing webinars that I do for my job as a marketing manager at my software consultancy.
Hi everyone, I can go next. I can't turn on my camera right now, so just imagine, I don't know, I look like a gray square with my name on it. My name is Crystal. I haven't done any I graduated from college last May. I haven't done any live events since, as you might guess, before the pandemic. But I've been composing for a fan dub, so that's like you take a comic and then you sort of make it into a YouTube video, and the production I'm with is also adding voice acting and music. So I've been composing for that. I don't really have like an artist name as of yet. Yes, that was all the questions. Nice to meet y'all.
And we also had Elisa type in that she's unable to speak at the moment, but she did type, her artist name, Elisa Sun, and she's not doing events at the moment other than the ones that she's being invited to. And Bao, you want to go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, hi guys. I think I've met almost all of you on one of these or from the ACN Songwriters Discord group. But I'm Bao. I don't think I have any events going on in the near future. I wish I did.
You just recently performed at a festival though, like a virtual festival.
Yeah, and I was able to, I think that was in December, like one of the last days of December. And I was able to set up my music studio to stream with a backing track and stuff, kind of like what Tony does during his live sets, which was a big accomplishment for me because my whole tech setup is a big mess. It's like extremely rudimentary. So yeah, I'm also not a very experienced streamer. And so all this is about learning new things for me as well, even though I'm super old.
Well, I hear you. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for being here, for sharing. This is something I've been thinking about for some time. For me, I haven't been doing a ton of events, but what's interesting is like my bandmates are all over the country. And because of lag times and everything else, it makes it very, very difficult for us to play together like live because of the lag. And so what we've been doing for these so-called like events where we perform is we basically pre-record it. We each kind of film like our part and then we stitch it together via video to make it look live. Kind of like, I don't know if you saw this video that was spread around social media of the Hamilton cast performing, like to surprise some kid who was like obsessed with it via Zoom call. It's like, well, they pre-recorded all that. It actually wasn't a live Zoom call. So that's how we've been kind of getting away with it. But the world is in flux right now. It's changing, and I think this is something that's been in a lot of people's minds, like of what's going to happen with live events. So I thought this is because the projection is that the world in some version of it is going to be coming back probably at the tail end of summer, maybe early fall, that there's going to be more and more opportunities opening up. And that being said, there are actually live events happening around the country right now. Well, maybe not now because of the winter storm, but there have been a lot of outdoor events, a couple of outdoor festivals, and to a limited degree, I've actually seen a number of music venues actually have indoor performances as well. So socially distanced, separated when possible. So some version of that. And as I think that as the vaccine rolls out, that it's very likely that we're going to see more and more versions of this kind of bubbling up. At the same time, we'll see more and more virtual events come in, and I don't think that is going to go away anytime soon. So a bunch of major music promoters, including Live Nation, have actually just invested millions and millions of dollars in technology for streaming services, and to basically create camera systems with multiple angled views at some pretty notable stages, because I think they feel like it's going to be a minute before we return to that world. So I thought we would kind of talk about this tonight, and how to actually prepare for that kind of moment. Like how do we actually book these events, whether they're virtual events or in-person events. And so I would love to kind of open it up to the room and kind of hear from your experiences. For those of you who have been performing like these kind of virtual events, or even if you've been kind of doing your own, like Tony, you've got a very, very active Twitch stream. We would love to kind of hear more about it. Like I would count like setting up your own events as actually doing events as well. So I'm kind of curious, like, are folks proactively searching them out, or are you kind of being passive? Like, are you waiting for invitations, or are you actively creating your own opportunities, either by booking events, looking for contacts, or creating your own kind of streams? And would love to just kind of hear more from you on that.
Yeah, sure. I also want to shout out the compliments, because they're the ones who got me into Twitch streaming in the first place. So they're the ones who inspired me. So they should definitely go after me.
And they just signed on, actually. They just
Yeah.
joined.
They're the best. So the reason I got on Twitch is I'm thinking from a marketing standpoint, which is, so last year I really struggled with engaging my fans, because I thought releasing music was the way to engage my fans. That's not how it works. You need people to be engaged with you as an artist before you release music. Otherwise, your music's just going to go into the void. So the reason I started on Twitch was to get back live performing, because I'd been doing streams like here and there of like various orgs or like on sessions. I also did Joy Records Club. But after Joy Records Club, I just realized like I could just do this on my own. And as long as I made it a regular thing, that would entice my warm audiences to come through. My secret strategy is I put my IG live like without the full audio while I stream. And then when people hop on my IG live, they're like, I can't hear everything. They're like, oh, the full audio is at Twitch. And then they head over to Twitch, and that's a funnel there. So originally I wasn't looking to make money through it, but since I've gotten Twitch affiliate, I've had fans like give me money and like pay for tiered subscriptions, even though don't even have any perks yet. But it's just like, oh, it's a light bulb moment of like, this can turn into like money for me to support my ventures and invest in myself. So I really highly recommend, especially if you're a newer artist, like Twitch, as soon as you like get the ball rolling, like you start to get cold fans as well, because the algorithm starts bubbling your stream up. I've gotten like a handful of new fans. I've only been streaming for like a month tops. And I've already gotten new fans who are engaged with my music, and my Spotify listeners are going up. My IG is going up. It's also like in combination with other things I'm doing, like TikTok and Clubhouse. But nevertheless, Twitch is a super awesome resource, especially if you really miss live performing. I can talk about tech maybe in another thread. But yeah, I have two threads. So one is like a piano bar / acoustic guitar, where I do like song requests, and then sometimes I also do an electronic set where I do like my original stuff with like live looping. So that's kind of the two sets I do. And then I used to do production streams, but I don't think my fans are engaged enough yet to care about that. So maybe I'll bring them back in the future. But for now, it's just live performing. Yeah, I want to popcorn Sue the compliments, because they're the masters. If you see their Twitch setup, it's so legit. And they inspired me. I'd love to hear more from them. Or just Greg, I thought.
Actually, can you hear me? I was playing around with my setup.
It's a little low.
Hello. Okay. Hey, everybody. Yeah, my name is Greg. I'm one half of the compliments. But thanks, Tony. Yeah, so we've been streaming on Twitch for like pretty regularly in the past year or so, like maybe a year and a half, something like that. And I'll just echo what Tony was saying. I think it's a great a great opportunity to reach reach a new audience and people who are going to be supportive. I think that what's really nice is that it gives an opportunity for your audience to find you, which I think is often what the nut we're trying to crack with marketing, or just like what do I do with whatever my product is, whether it's I'm a producer, whether it's I'm a recording artist, whether I want to be a touring artist, whatever. It's nice because however the platform works is, there's a lot of technology and I think a lot of behind the scenes stuff that we don't necessarily get to see as a creator. But once you kind of find some momentum, people who gravitate toward what you do will kind of, they'll follow you and then kind of become your pretty fiercely loyal supporters, and it's been very refreshing. Of course, during the pandemic, there have been it's like a pretty significant or substantial influx of people who are creating on the platform. But the way I see it, it's like the more eyes or human bodies that are coming on to watch on the platform, the better for everybody, because when big stars, and occasionally they have had some pretty big outside industry names come onto the platform, and it's like it's not necessarily a competition, because like the people who are there to see Logic or Mike Shinoda or whatever, like they weren't there to see people like us in the first place. But if any of those hundreds of thousands of people trickle down to the rest of the community, like that's good for everybody. And yeah, I Alicia and I have been talking about this with a lot of our singer-songwriter and other musician friends. Like, it is a good, if you're looking for a way to try to, well, number one, I think it's about audience first, but then there is the money aspect to it as well. Like, you do have opportunities to make some supplemental income. I wouldn't think of it as like, hey, I'm gonna throw everything into live streaming. Like, if you're lucky and you're that one in whatever, that small percentage of people who can make that work, like, that's great. But just if you go into it with the mindset, hey, this is something I want to try, it's an opportunity for new audience. It's a global audience, so like a lot of the people, most of them won't even be anywhere geographically near you. But just like coming into it with an open mindset, reaching out to people like Tony or ourselves, like people who have experience on it, like it's a very welcoming community. Like, everybody, if you have questions, most musicians at least are happy to either answer your questions while they're streaming, or at least engage with you offline. Yeah, you can definitely work on your performance chops, work on whatever it is you're working on. There's an audience for it, and I have no doubt that everybody on this call would have something that people would want to hear. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
One last bit that I would say is, like, we just got partnered on the platform, which was kind of a grind. But we're kind of doing a series where we want to help out fellow, especially Asian, content creators. So if checking out Twitch is something that you're interested in, feel free to get in touch with me, or I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Thank you. Tony, you mentioned for a minute Joy Ruckus Club, and I know some of the other folks in the room have also played that event as well. I'm just kind of curious for those who have, or other kind of online festivals that are similar to it, are those opportunities that you've been seeking out, or have they been contacting you for those opportunities?
I think JRC should be its own conversation, because they're let's say pros and cons to that opportunity. But in terms of in general, yeah, typically, I think Elisa said, I'm not seeking out any opportunities unless people reach out to me. I definitely feel that. It's really hard to live stream. So in the first half of the year, I wasn't really looking out for anything. It's usually organizations who are like holding like a fundraiser, or like I played an awards show for a theater company I'm involved in. Like, stuff like that is pretty low key. But I do want to say, even if it's just an IG live, I think because stuff is opening up again, like I really encourage people who do perform live to start performing live again. Because that's a muscle you have to exercise. Like you can't just hop back on stage and expect it to go well. I think it's a really good practice to play live streams. Even though it's not quite the same as live performance, it's really helpful.
Anyone else wanted to share in regards to some of the opportunities that you've been kind of pursuing or performing?
I think I can add something about live streams as well. So I was trying to do live streams, and I think it's really cool how Tony and the compliments took the angle. Like I took the angle of like when I was trying to write my new songs or just trying to understand like what do I want to create. Like I started a weekly live stream and I just invited different musician friends that I had on. So I used that as an opportunity to make more friends and like find co-writers. Find co-writers. And ever since then, like I've had like a handful of collaborations, and I have people I continually collaborate with as just like friends, right? And I think like live streaming, like I did my whole own setup, so I had to learn how to use OBS and Twitch Studio and all these audio things, and it took a long time, but it was actually super super fun. Like being able to like bring people on to a Twitch stream, because I would bring people through Zoom, and then we'd have like a 1 hour long conversation, and we'd be performing back and forth and all that kind of stuff. And I don't do it right now, but when I did it for like the 30, 25 weeks or so, like a weekly kind of thing, it was super cool. But it was very nerve wracking, like from a performance standpoint, just kind of like performing to the void. But it was pretty cool. And I also learned a lot about like Photoshop and creating overlays. So if anyone's creating their own overlays, like we can talk too, because like that was a challenge, but it was pretty fun.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And I think that, one of the things you'll notice between Tony, what the compliments are doing, what Keyshawn's doing, like there's a key theme here, and that is consistency. Like publishing on a regular basis is a really important like factor to consider if you are going to be developing your own channels. We know algorithms like that. We know and audiences like that. Then it's just kind of like being able to tune into a live TV show that's on air. It's like knowing that the person is there, and also that as a live event, there's some of the fun and excitement of it being live. The other part of it that I'm glad you brought up, Kishan, is like you can also use it as an opportunity to collaborate, or to kind of share that space with other people. And this is kind of, I think, important because it's, I think, what we oftentimes kind of forget when we're thinking about all these social tools is that sometimes we write towards an algorithm like, oh, it's Instagram, I got to do X number of posts per week or per day. Sometimes I got to use these particular times and that kind of thing. And while it's good to optimize like the tools that you have to kind of heighten exposure, I think it's also important to realize, like, at the end of the day, if you're performing for an audience. You got to learn how to connect with an audience. And so oftentimes, like, the path is very similar to both of these things, but it's also important to think like who are you trying to reach? Like, who's that ultimate audience that you want to get to? So while the algorithm might be a way of like using the tool better to kind of refine the process, it is important to think like, who am I actually trying to reach? So if you're thinking about like fellow collaborators and you want to say like reach out to outside audiences, outside of like say fellow API performers or other folks, it's kind of you can kind of change the audience that you reach based on the people that you collaborate with, based on the people that you kind of invite to your show and that sort of thing. So for example, not unlike a regular like live streaming show, I hosted a daily podcast called Music Business Hacks. And so for me, the audience wasn't just anybody, like any casual podcast listener. It was specifically for artists and a little bit of industry folks just trying to get some insight into their artistic career. And so one way that I kind of helped kind of amplify that audience very quickly was inviting industry guests and other artists and people that I knew. And what was kind of surprising to me was that because it was a consistent, so again, that kind of regular showing up kind of thing, and because it was like very, very focused on a particular type of audience, that I would have a lot of industry folks just begin reaching out to me because they're like, oh, we've been hearing about the show. We want to kind of, be a guest on the show and that sort of thing. And so then I had numerous like people like Jason Davis, one of the co-founders of Radar Label Group, who worked with like, the Plain White Tees and other groups like that. I had like, Jay-Z's manager reach out to me and ask if I wanted to help like develop their sponsorship for their tour. I've had like Snoop Dogg's manager like reach out. So it was like, wow, all of a sudden I'm unlocking these other relationships unintentionally just because I was showing up consistently and because all I knew was like the audience is going to be like fellow artists and that sort of thing. And then I didn't realize that like, oh, some of the people that I could invite on could also be a targeted ask of like, they want a similar kind of audience. Like we have similar goals in mind. So let's go ahead and work together and reach that particular goal. In the same kind of way, and this tying it back into like booking, if you're looking for opportunities, one of the great things about this is that if you're very thoughtful about who your audience is, like the followers that you have already, or friends and family who are supportive and who, willing to watch your live stream or to show up at a show, when you book an event, you could basically make sure that you understand that the audience they're trying to reach is the one that's already in your pocket, like an audience that you already have. What it could be a modest following. It doesn't have to be this huge thing, but if you understand that you have an audience and you can kind of maybe bump that up in terms of like your pitches or things that you're reaching out to people with, you're much more likely to secure those kinds of opportunities. So for those who are interested in looking for opportunities beyond like creating your own channel, I think the Twitch path is like a really interesting thing. And a lot of people have been experiencing a lot of success with it and also just having a lot of fun. Like it's cool. Tony, actually, I see you every time I hop on Instagram, which is not very often these days. You're like almost always at the top of my feed. I'm like, oh, there he is, blowing up again. Awesome. So it's really cool to see all of you like active on this. But beyond like kind of your own channels, this right now, mid-February is actually probably the perfect time to be booking events for May. May, as many of you know, is the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And the word out there right now amongst nearly every organization I know is that they are desperate because everyone's pivoting their annual galas. Everyone's pivoting their events to do something online. And many of them don't have experience in this area and don't really know how to organize something. So oftentimes you can actually bring in a pre-packaged event and just say, hey, what are you doing for, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month? What do you think about like a live concert or a variety show? So you can package together, your fellow friends, even folks on this call or other people that and say like, we would love to do a celebration with your organization. This is across the board, by the way, with say higher education groups and high school groups. I've been working with both who, have like Asian student unions or some kind of API club, and they want to do something, but they don't really know what to do with it. So you can just literally Google like student union groups and begin contacting them. But it's also for kind of some of those larger social organizations as well. There's hundreds of them all over the place that go with specific affinity groups, such as like the OCA, the Organization of Chinese Americans, to the JACL, the Japanese American Citizens Alliance. And a lot of them have local chapters as well you kind of name it. Like APIs are a very, very diverse community, right? And then there's like a lot of intersections with that identity that you can kind of look for. So if you're looking for some additional opportunities, that's a great way to go about it. And although a lot of the budgets have been cut for higher education institutions, many of them still are able to offer honorariums so that, yeah, you can get paid. The other thing that I wanted to kind of pull from something that Tony mentioned of like like earning income, like as you know, he's doing it as an affiliate and like is able to kind of, I'm guessing, Tony, you're rolling it into other work, like for people who want to hire you for production work or to collaborate or something like that. But is also to like think about like merchandise. So I'm kind of curious, like who in the room right now has merch beyond like, you know, streaming on my Spotify kind of thing, like t-shirts, stickers, and that sort of thing. So, okay, a couple of you want to kind of share what you have. Are you doing print on demand? Are you buying in bulk, getting it printed? How are you selling your merchandise?
I'll go first. So I did a merch drop. So like, as opposed to constantly having merch and constantly having to pay that $40 a month to Shopify, because I know my fan base is smaller. We only have like 1,000 something followers on Instagram. I know that I'd rather just sprint and get as many sales as possible, as opposed to just like having it like so stressed out, and we're just trying to minimize costs. But we sold about like 3,000 worth of merch back in November during our concert. It was just t-shirts, hoodies, postcards and stickers. So that was easy, especially the postcards and stickers. Those are just handwritten. So I could actually like connect the fans and mail them something physical. And basically the amount they paid for it just covered the postage and stuff. But yeah, it was just like the simple stuff. And I found that sprinting and just like marketing this like for a very, very limited amount of time worked really well. And like, we have a lot of people just coming up to us or just DMing us and asking us, yo, where are these sweaters? Why can't I buy one anymore? And we got to say, it was only for a limited time, right? So the next time that we drop it, we'll be sure, because they message us, we have their contact information. We'll be sure to hit them up again, and sell it to them. And we'll probably like raise the price a bit too. But then because they want it so bad and they know it's going to be gone, then it'll just be easier to sell them on that. But that's how I did it for merch.
Hey, and would you mind elaborating a little more? Like, what site are you using to sell these things? Do you have a particular vendor you're using for creating the products, and you know, just some more details for in case folks are looking for similar kinds of things?
I use Shopify and Printful. So that's like the print on demand service that Shopify just like pushes out. And it was actually pretty simple to set up. It was, I think, I don't know how much it is in American dollars, but I think it was like $40 Canadian, or maybe it was 40 American. I don't remember, but it was 40 something to set up Shopify. And then with the print on demand, basically how that works is you don't pay for anything unless a customer buys a shirt. And I found that if you're selling remotely, so like in these times where we can't sell like in to the person, then it's actually it's a lot easier. But I would definitely recommend, if you're going to be selling merch like in person and stuff, like buy a bunch of it, because the shipping will be a lot cheaper, the costs will be a lot cheaper, because you're buying in bulk, just like going to Costco. And just having that and just knowing like how many you're going to sell. But if you're just like selling like one-offs and you're selling across the country and you can't get that stuff, then or can't get that stuff overseas, it's too expensive for you to like mail it yourself, then like getting a print on demand service is pretty convenient, because they just cover all the cost, or they don't cover all the costs, but you kind of work into your pricing however much it's going to ship, and their shipping is cheaper than if you were going to buy a bunch of shirts and then ship them individually by yourself.
And Bao, I think I saw your hand up. Do you want to share a bit about your experience?
Yeah, sure. Kenneth, that is genius. I love all the stuff that you guys came up with. It's a really cool approach, and actually really engaging to have the time limited approach. So congrats to you guys for selling what, $3,000 worth of stuff in November. So I had another act previously called Ming and Ping, and Ming and Ping has so much merch because we'd been doing stuff for like a decade. And eventually I pivoted to print on demand because holding inventory and doing the fulfillment was like the bane of my existence. Like, if I think about the entertainment business, or not business, but the lifestyle of an entertainer, a musician, I think that fulfillment stuff was the worst thing about it. It was like the absolute most terrible activity involved in being a musician. And so I also use Printful now to do my print on demand stuff. And I mean, it's been all right. One complaint I have is that they keep running out of like t-shirt models and telling you to put in like alternative options for the products. Oh yeah, there's a link in the chat now to Printful. But Printful is great because my website is built on WordPress and I just integrated Printful into the WordPress e-commerce called WooCommerce. And it didn't, it wasn't anything extra. So anytime somebody buys anything off my WordPress site, it sends it to Printful. Printful sends the product to the customer. I don't touch anything. Sometimes I'll have to approve an order, but that's about it. That's a one-click thing. So that's cool. Before that, yeah, you do have to buy some inventory and hold on to it. If you're playing live shows, definitely Kenneth is way correct about that because it's just not viable, right, to do on demand if you're playing live shows. People are excited and they want that impulse buy. So to have that t-shirt or that vinyl or whatever already there is the way to go. What else have I been doing? I have a bunch of free stuff that is about to come up. Just helpers for people making music like you guys, little free digital downloads and stuff. And I think that's what people, in my experience for other, sorry, I got distracted by the chat. In my experience for other industries, not in music, just offering some free stuff kind of drives people over. Simon knows this. He gives the free like ebooks and stuff. And it captures, at first it brings people in, but it also allows you to capture their contact information. And so I think that's another strategy. That's another strategy to introduce people to what's available in your merch store. Like if they come for the free stuff, they'll see, oh, look, that's a clever face mask or whatever you got going on. Yeah, I think that's it. Just having the traditional stuff for live shows and then really take advantage of print on demand because the worst thing in life is trying to fulfill orders.
I hear you. I mean, I got like an attic full of stuff, mostly a lot of books right now. So anyone else have experiences with merch, maybe using other tools that are available out there that you're pairing up with?
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. The second worst thing in life is having a bunch of inventory that you couldn't unload. So now you have boxes of weird sized t-shirts that nobody's ever going to wear. That's going to go to Goodwill or whatever eventually. That's the second worst thing in life about buying merch in advance.
Yeah, I guess I'll say something. So I did the same thing. I kind of bought a ton of merch when I was doing live shows, and that was my first run of merch, and now I just use Printful as well. But yeah, buying a ton of merch, I learned that no one buys a size small t-shirt. When I first bought shirts, I did the same amount of small, medium, large, and now I mostly just focus on like large, extra large as the majority of my order because everyone's always buying those instead of the smaller ones. I'm stuck with a bunch of like tiny shirts, so.
Do you guys ever think it's too soon to start making your own merch? Because I feel like that's what I've been trying to figure out, if it's too soon for me to start making merch or not.
I'm going to say no, because right now the barrier to entry is so low. To start a Printful account and upload your first graphic to a t-shirt or a sweater, it's like, I don't know, 20 minutes of your time. Whereas previously it's hundreds or thousands of dollars of an investment. So now the investment is so low, I would say go for it as soon as you have a clever idea.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I had t-shirts at our very first show when we launched. And I think that like when someone owns a piece of your merch, it's not like a single transaction. It's like a development. It's like a step into a relationship because every time they wear that shirt or that piece of merchandise, they're going to be thinking of you. So I would say like, go ahead and dive in, especially with a low risk kind of thing, like like a print on demand. And for folks who don't know, Saren just dropped a single like a couple weeks ago as well. So like, hey, if you want to like bring some more hype to that, like, yeah, support it with merch. Like like tie it in. You can, and what's cool about like print on demand is you can do almost an unlimited number of designs. You want to do a special edition, you want to do something that ties in like lyrics for the new song you just released, you want to use unique imagery, like there's all kind, you could experiment with it. You can actually launch with a lot of designs and then kind of narrow down the shop to focus on things that are doing better than others. I'll give a couple of like things that we've been doing with the slants. First of all, like I also am a part of the club that has had way too many shirts and other miscellaneous things. It's kind of a part of being a touring artist, I think. Although what we ended up doing is over time was I would collect all the odd sizes and either do a grab bag like as a clearance, like, and it'd be a surprise. You just pay like $5 and you'd get a shirt in your size. We didn't tell you what it was, you would just get it. But we also paired it up to do giveaways. Sometimes we would like raffle things off on stage. We would donate it to charity, like by all signing it. And, sometimes we would do it as a thank you to like a club or an organization. And then we would take the t-shirt, we'd all sign it, maybe write a note on it, frame it and give it to them. And then they'd have it up in their office. And we did this for our sponsors too, so that when we came up to them and asked for a sponsorship or something like that, again, they were looking at this shirt every day in their office and they're like, oh, of course, we love you. So like there's some fun ways to kind of take that and turn it around. And then towards the last year or so of touring, especially prior to the pandemic, what we ended up doing is I collected all these things and then I created like giveaway packages where people could, if you donated a certain amount of money to the Slants Foundation, you'd get a t-shirt, a hoodie, CDs, book, and like we created like a package, and then it made it a lot more desirable. Since then, we've probably in the last few years of touring, we also used a print on demand service. Although unlike literally every other person that spoke, I don't use Printful. I use Threadless. Threadless was a company that I, as a t-shirt lover, like I loved the quality of their cuts and everything. And then they have something called Artist by Threadless. So you can create your own designs, and then it could be everything from t-shirts to aprons. I know we've sold bath mats and shower curtains and duvets and duffel bags. Like there's a lot of stuff in there. So same concept. Someone else can hop on the shop. They can buy it. You get your cut. The customer gets their package and whatever it might be. But for those who are looking to, have some kind of physical piece for when we have live events, something I absolutely recommend. There's a couple of things that you might want to consider. One, if you get a resale license, which is most of the time free or like 10 or $15 in most states, you can actually order in bulk from clothing vendors that sell to other vendors. So in other words, you're not paying like full retail price for these things. And what I ended up doing is I went through a company called RG Riley, and they sell seconds or thirds. So they're like t-shirts and hoodies and other things that maybe aren't quite perfect, like because some of the stitching is off or something like that, but they usually look really, really good. And I would end up buying these things for super cheap. I would say the average I paid for a t-shirt was like 70 cents. And then for like a zip up hoodie, like $3 to $4. And then in the beginning, I bought my own screen printing kit and was like hand screening these things, especially in 2017. And you're supposed to cure them with very high heat. Like they have like heat guns, and I didn't want to pay for the gun. So I just baked them in my oven, and most of them did not get burnt. I burnt a couple of them. I don't recommend that because it's very toxic. It made my whole house smell. So don't do that. But then what I ended up doing was like, like that was way too much work. I worked with a local vendor and negotiated a price down. And I said, hey, if I supply my own like clothing, could I pay per piece and just get this printed out? And so we worked out a relationship, and I actually gave him the screens that I bought that I was using on my own. So, like most people will, if you're buying hoodies in bulk, and let's say you're going through a typical printer like Jack Prints or Ooh Shirts or something like that, you're probably paying about $25 to $35 per hoodie. So that's a lot of money up front and you usually got to do a minimum order of like 48. So you're spending, 600 to $1,000 for like hoodies. I got them like at the end of the day printed on both sides, full color, for zip up hoodies for less than $8 a piece, which you can still sell at the same full rate. So there's ways to like buy in bulk, and there are also ways to negotiate with local vendors as well. So, for those who are like looking to do, say, a performance, you got a big gig coming up, like maybe a festival, conference, or something else, or you're doing a series of shows, like you're about to go on tour, like capital is really important, especially if you got to travel, you got to pay for all that gas. What I ended up doing is negotiating rates with local vendors and saying like, hey, can I pay you net 30 or net 60 or even net 90, which meant I would get all the merchandise up front, and then I wouldn't have to pay them for 30, 60 or 90 days later. So it allowed me to like get all the merchandise so we can go on the road, play a bunch of shows, sell a lot of that merchandise, and then use the sales and the proceeds to pay off this like kind of balloon payment of like all the costs it took to get printed. And you can do this like whether it's t-shirts or otherwise. Like for most pieces of merchandise, you can negotiate those terms. The only exception I found is like physical media, like CDs and vinyl. Usually you got to pay for that like all at once. And but on the flip side, like the cost of printing CDs is like dropped down really, really dramatically because no one's doing it anymore. But like you can get creative to it with it. Kenneth mentioned like limited edition runs, which I think is always like a brilliant idea. We did this because like on the back of our t-shirts, we would have like all the dates of our tour, like all of the different cities we played and sometimes the venue name. And then we would also like option that for sponsors and say like, hey, if you want to help sponsor our tour, your logo can be on the back of our t-shirt or that sort of thing. And it was an easy way to also get our merchandise paid for, so that when we did sell it, we could sell it for like 100% margin because we didn't have to pay for that up front. So there's a couple different ideas. I would just say like definitely be creative. Like when you're playing these events, like figure out like how you can leverage the opportunity to get more out of that particular opportunity. It looks like Bao, you got your digital hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Simon, as well as the group, whether people have experience with or recommendations for a short run production of music products such as cassettes and vinyls and CDs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies that do that now. For a short run, I usually use disc makers. They're kind of like the corporate giant now, but it's cheap and pretty easy to turn around. I mean, way back in the day, I used to just burn my own CDs and then create stuff like my own custom packaging. But I think short run is another good option if you're not sure how many you're going to sell. Like if you, particularly if it's pretty early in your career and you only have a handful of shows, you're not going like on a massive tour or something like that. That's a great way to like lower that big upfront fee. And then also it's kind of a test concept. Like you can order just a couple pieces, see what does well, and then back the piece that does the best.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you guys wanted to produce some physical merch, there are a few short run vendors that you can look up and just order like 100 of something,
Yeah. And like, as you're doing those like kind of live stream events, like definitely you can pair that up, like use that as an opportunity. I know like a number of you mentioned, like, once you get like affiliate status on Twitch, you can get people to kind of kick in some cash to you to donate to your stream and that sort of thing. But I mean, even if you're not using Twitch, if you're going IG Live or Facebook or YouTube, or I mean, everyone's got something like that. Like you can play, and you can also like drop links and encourage people to like check out the merchandise that you have available in that moment. and it's just a great way to get more. The other thing that I kind of wanted to touch on too is like negotiation. Like, so, you know, obviously merch is something that you can control yourself to kind of increase your revenue per performance, but you can also negotiate better rates when performing at events as well. And I would bet quite heavily that as live events come back, that venues and promoters are going to be trying really, really hard to attract musicians again. And as such, they're probably going to change that relationship dynamic a bit to offer terms that are more favorable to artists. So, and same thing with virtual events. Like, you can negotiate pay. Like, this is not like a set thing. And so I'm kind of curious for folks who've been kind of doing these kind of live events, have you been negotiating and like what's been working for you, or like what hasn't worked so well?
I don't know about negotiating specifically, but I do ask people for free products that I can give away to my fans sometimes. So we did a Ming and Ping fundraiser for an album, and just our corporate friends just donated their products as part of the fundraiser. So, you know, pitch in $30 to help us make this album and do this tour or whatever. And we had a little contest or like a giveaway. So people are super willing to do that stuff too. You just kind of have to be clever and spell it out for them so they don't have to imagine anything.
And Bao, could you clarify, is that like for something like a crowdfunding kind of effort that y'all did, or?
Yeah, we were funding a tour, I guess. And as a part of that, I forget who, but some other companies just donated stuff to us to give away as part of the sweepstakes or whatever for all of our fundraising people. And that was just a way to like introduce our fans to their products. And I think there's a lot of companies that are willing to do that. You just kind of, like I said earlier, don't leave anything to their imagination. Like spell out how it's going to work for them, what they get out of it. And if they pass on it, cool. Somebody will bite.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's great, like kind of bringing in that mindset of like collaborating with other folks. And certainly if you are doing crowdfunding campaigns, as you develop relationships, like it's all right to ask. And, you know, for many people, it's an honor to be asked to help out somebody, especially your fellow artist.
Yeah, totally. And I think to translate that into like 2021 language, like if you have a huge following on Twitch or something, like, you know, people get those little sponsorship deals where they get free computers and shit. You can start way smaller than that. You can start with like, here's a $5 gift card from, you know, this coffee shop. And that's something that drives people to your artist.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, like that can also be a way to help like negotiate better pay for events as well. So for example, a number of years ago, our band was doing a CD release party at an event, and I had just secured a new sponsor from, I think it was Asahi. It was like an Asian beer company or something like that. And I talked to the venue and I was like, hey, can we do like a drink special? Like we'll roll up and we'll give you the product for free, like unlimited product that you can sell at your bar for 100%. But the deal is you got to bump up our guaranteed pay. Like instead of giving us a door deal, which is very typical, your average venue is gonna, is anyone here like not familiar with the door deal concept? Okay, so a door deal is basically, it's like a split with the venue. Most of the time, if you're touring and playing venues, what they're gonna do is tell you, like if it's a door deal, they will have a minimum set number of expenses for the night that the first, say $300 of the door will go to, or ticket sales will go to. And then anything above and beyond their set cost for the night, they will split amongst the artists. Sometimes the venue will even still take a percentage of that. So for example, let's say you sell $1,000 worth of tickets at the door, and for people paying to go to the show, they take, say, $300 out for the expenses that night. That remaining $700 is split amongst the different acts of the night, unless the venue takes an additional cut. And so the other way of kind of arranging payments for live events is like a minimum guarantee. And the guarantee is basically like, hey, no matter what happens that night, whether one person shows up or 500 people show up, you're going to give me X amount of dollars. So you can do a set price of, say, like, I want $500 no matter what, right? And so in that other scenario, like, you probably would come out ahead, like if they only brought in 1,000, especially if they have to pay the other artists as well. But let's say they brought in $1,500, you just kind of shot yourself in the foot because you lost the opportunity to earn more. So lower risk, possibly lower payment, but you can negotiate for a better guarantee. And so that's when you can do that by either leveraging your fan base and saying like, hey, we just sold out this other club, or we bring in so many people, or we got, we're getting this radio play or this big publicity campaign. Can you throw in a little bit more? So you can raise that, or, you can sometimes even negotiate for a better percentage rate, like say, hey, those room costs are kind of high. Can we cut back on that a little bit? So negotiating comes in a lot of different ways, but ultimately you got to position it as like, how can the venue benefit from this? How can they benefit from giving you more money or a bigger cut of the deal, right? And so that's where you say like, hey, we bring in these relationships, we bring in these fans, we bring in notoriety, whatever it is that you have to offer. And as an artist, you do have a lot to offer. I would say, especially this year and early next year, when businesses are going to be desperate to bring people in, you could say like, I have a fan base. I have people who are going to be supportive and who will show up in person and buy drinks and order food and all the other things that you want to do. So that's where you can kind of leverage a little bit more. But on the flip side, if you're doing like a virtual event and let's say someone's like, we're not going to pay you, like this is just a free virtual event for the community, then you can kind of say, well, I bring in so many people, like, are you able to do a split? Or can we pass the hat and drop some donation links? Or can you, whatever it is that you have an ask for, you can certainly make the case for it.
My experience, Simon, is that our band really leveraged the bar at all of our venues. I would ask them at the end of the night how much money they made at the bar while we were packing out, so that I can go to the next venue and say, hey man, our last few shows, the bars have made this much, so maybe you can throw in more money for our guarantee or whatever. So there's that guarantee, there's the bar money, and then there's the door money. So I think those are your three areas where you can work as far as negotiating how much you're getting paid for a show.
Yeah, definitely. You can ask for a percentage of bar sales too. And what they'll do is they'll print out a copy of the receipts of that night. So you can keep a copy of that, so you can keep a track record. The other thing that I think Bao brings up a good point is like, figure out how much money is being made and actually keep a track record of this. Like if you can, create a spreadsheet to figure out like how much you're earning, how much the bar promoter venue is earning, so that you could see like if it's increasing over time. That's also when you can make the case for it. Because say you're playing your hometown and you're playing the same handful of venues all the time, a lot of times they're just gonna be like, we want to give you the same deal that we gave you last time, right? But if you're steadily increasing your fan base, that's where you can say, hey, I got the receipts, I got the numbers, this is what we've been doing over time. Can we renegotiate this a little bit and make this truly a win-win deal? So we kind of dived into a lot of different areas on booking and making money, booking and doing shows and that sort of thing. Do folks have any questions about this, or your own experience or things that you would love to share?
I can. Could I share one helpful, hopefully helpful insight about the booking thing or the negotiating? So Simon, thanks again for organizing this. I forgot to say that when I first came on the mic. But something. So one of our friends runs like it's essentially a booking agency for events. Most of the events that they're doing now are virtual, or actually all of them because you can't meet anyhow. But I was asking him about tips on negotiating for doing like a virtual event or playing music for a virtual event, and I was like, hey, like should we go lower than our normal rate because it's not in person? We don't have to do as much. We're gonna do it from our, you don't have to take equipment, stuff like that. And he was saying, don't let companies fool you into thinking that it's any less work for you. Like the budgets that they would have otherwise allotted for an in-person holiday party or whatever, like, are still existent because it's not like their money just disappeared. And so that's just one thing that's like, okay, that's helpful to know. So just like whatever your rate is for an event, we're talking about booking virtual events, hopefully for API month or outside of that as well. Don't be afraid to say, well, this is my rate. And if they like give you crap for it because it's virtual, just, you can always say like, well, I have to rehearse. I have to, it's not any easier because I don't have to go somewhere, even though it's slightly easier. But anyhow, that's just
Such a good point.
Absolutely. Definitely don't be afraid to ask. The thing I tell artists again and again is like, until you ask, the answer is always no. But I would say like, we as artists, we shouldn't have to justify like the amount of work that goes in. Like, someone might say, oh, you're only just playing one song. It's like 3.5 minutes long. It's like, yeah, but it took like how many months to write and to record and produce, and how much money do you have to pay to go into the studio and all the equipment that goes in. Like, you shouldn't necessarily have to do that. I would say like, definitely come from a position of like worth, like this is value to you. And and you can also like position it as like, this is about building a relationship, and say like, hey, well, even if you are giving them a discount, make sure they understand it's a discount. So to say like, this is about valuing each other. You're providing a space and I'm bringing in an audience, and we both win from this. Or if it is a company event, organization event, like I'm doing something to help increase employee retention, like basically all the things that you're offering that are valuable to the recipient. Like those are the things. Like, and maybe not everyone has the capacity. Like we know some businesses were hit harder than others. So like we get that, but like figure out a way, and just, you can always oftentimes kind of tease it out and ask in a way that's respectful. And if they're unable to budge, then see like if you're cool with it, then roll with it. If not, then that's okay as well. Like some people have actually increased their business during the pandemic. So you never know, like there could be additional capacity there. So yeah, just kind of before we jump into like a open Q&A to like on any kind of subject that's on your hearts and minds, just kind of want to recap a couple of things here. Thank you all for sharing lots of great information, and thank you for kind of sharing your own experiences with it. We know that whether you are booking events or you're live streaming, like the key here is consistency, like understanding who your audience is and how to reach that particular audience. The audience is there to develop a relationship with you. So you could oftentimes leverage opportunities, be it in person or online, by finding other ways to deepen that relationship while increasing your revenue. So that oftentimes means doing merchandise. And if you don't want to like have a massive attic full of merchandise like me, you can use a print on demand service and not have to worry about minimums and that sort of thing. It's good to stock up if you're touring. Like, don't get me wrong, you could save a lot of money and make more doing that. But for now, print on demand is oftentimes really helpful. And what's also nice is like drop shipping, because like I remember when we first started out, we were trying to ship online orders in the middle of our tour. So I meant like taking time every day to find a post office, package things up, and mail it from whatever city we were in. And you don't want to be doing that. Like that's just, let your online sales be your online sales, and your in-person be your in-person. We also know that as the trends are shifting right now, and people are planning to open things up again, there's still probably going to be virtual events. Most likely 99% of the events that you would book for Asian Pacific American Heritage Month are going to be virtual. But right now is the time to strike, like either by creating your own events, by pitching organizations and groups. Like, I think the perfect opportunity are Asian American student groups at universities and high schools around the country, who oftentimes will have some kind of budget and who are going to be looking to plan right about now. And you could either pitch yourself as a singular act, or maybe go in on it with some friends or some fellow creators in this stream, or other creators. It doesn't necessarily have to be all music. You can get with comedians or magicians, or like whatever it is that you want, and create like your own kind of event and pitch it to groups. But beyond that, folks are planning to open up like probably at the tail end of summer or early fall. And traditionally, when you're booking events, especially like say a series of shows, you want to be hitting people up at minimum like 3 or 4 months out. And because there's a certain level of uncertainty, I would say like at the end of spring, as if it looks like the trend is continuing where we're going to be opening up again, you probably want to start booking for late summer, right around May or so. And you kind of want to fine tune your pitch. So this is a great opportunity to do so as you're looking for virtual events, of like pitching in a way that demonstrates your value to that person that's doing an event. And that means like demonstrating you have an audience, whether it's in person or a large social following, and in addition to your talent and to your craft. So those are some of the main kind of takeaways. Oh, and don't forget, ask for your worth. Like, don't be afraid to ask for more, to negotiate, be it a cut at the door, a bar, live stream tips, or otherwise. Like, you can find ways to kind of increase your pay and those opportunities so that you can actually have a good, sustainable career.
Simon, have we already covered EPKs and like a template for a pitch?
No, I mean, we did pitching on our very first Artist Think Tank session, but if you want to talk about EPKs?
I think we should, because in this day and age, you want to send somebody to like a one pager so they understand. And like keeping receipts is useless unless you can re-present all of that information to somebody, right? But an EPK is basically what an electronic press kit is. That what it stands for?
Yeah.
But in this day and age, it's a one pager that shares how your music sounds. It shows an image or a video of how you look, and it describes the concept and what you have to offer as an artist, so that people can see right away what value you're providing. I think we can maybe after this find some examples to send out. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's vital, because we keep talking about pitching, but like to start from scratch is so hard, right? To start with a template is it saves you so much reinvention of the wheel.
Yeah. I should mention that there are websites that, two really popular websites that artists use to create EPKs. Sonic Bids is one of them, and Reverb Nation is another one. And you can actually use those sites. Their main business is actually getting you to pitch for festivals, to get your music in front of music supervisors in case you want placement for TV or film or other kinds of opportunities. So for many, many years, the only way to apply for major festivals like South by Southwest, Bonnaroo, Austin City Limits, et cetera, was through Sonic Bids. So I'll give you an example. This hasn't been updated in some time since we haven't really used it, but like in the chat box, there's the Sonic Bids page for the Slants. And you don't even have to use this. Like if you want to create your own one-page website or use any other kind of portfolio website, you can just kind of think like these are the kind of typical things you want, right? If you have press mentions, a quick bio, photos, videos, as just like Val mentioned, and then a way for someone to preview your music. A lot of people will create like PDF decks or PowerPoints or things like that. I highly recommend against this. If you're contacting people to book them, you don't want to send attachments. So don't attach your song, don't attach like a EPK unless you already had an exchange and they've specifically requested. That's because most of the time email servers are likely to like kick you out, or like you get flagged for spam for sending those attachments and that sort of thing. That's why having an online presence, like an online EPK, is a really great way to do this. You can also, for those of you who have your own websites, create a landing page on your website, very specific to speak towards promoters. So this is basically the equivalent of creating like a one sheet, like a one page tell all, like all the main bullet points of like what you have to offer, all the kind of best of stuff that you have to offer for promoters. And that could be another way to do it, especially if you don't want to pay for like a monthly service, like through Sonic Bids or Reverb Nation or something like that. Like they all have free versions of their services, but really to like capitalize on it, you got to pay like between 10 and 15 bucks a month.
Yeah, so on my WordPress site, I just make a separate one pager for different uses, such as the EPK or some sort of booking sales page. And this is just like the very top line stuff. And if they want to find out more information, they can contact you. But it basically gives you your image and your music like really quickly, and then any cool testimonials that you've gotten in the past from press or other venues. One thing I wanted to also bring up that has been really useful for us in booking is using something like Trello, which is a free project management tool, to just keep track of who you reached out to, what their responses are, who hasn't responded to you. And this not only allows you to keep your shit together, but like if you're working with a band with like 3 other people, everyone can pitch in their efforts and keep organized. So there's no duplication of efforts and there's no miscommunication. So for us, for our band, we use Trello because it's free, and we just keep track of like cold leads, medium, hot leads, and whoever has accepted our pitches. So that's Trello.com, I think.
Do you want to drop in the chat a link to your own EPK? And same thing with any other folks. I know Tony, you got one here. Like for anyone else who has like an EPK, just so folks can get like a sampling of like how other people are approaching this thing.
Also want to chime in that you're not to throw more anxiety on the social media fire, but having a solid social media brand is also important when someone comes and finds you. But like this is outside of like promoters, but people have found me for producing gigs because my social media was like ready. So like for example, your bio, in mine it literally says DM me if you want to make a song together. Like having that branding like really like out in front is super important as well. So don't forget about your social media. And it's as simple as like a good like bio, or like having your feed look a certain way, or like having your TikTok have a certain like feel to it. So just something else to think about as well.
Absolutely. And if you're like contacting a lot of events, you do want to actually have your own website, like, and not just rely entirely on social, particularly if you're working with clubs and promoters. This is something that's like really important because it just demonstrates like you have a little bit more of an investment into creating a space that's yours. And on top of that, you can control every aspect of your own website. So you can, pull out certain things and highlight things, and whoever's on your website won't necessarily get distracted by their own feed and what's going on, and might pop off into something else. All right. So do we have, I want to open up the kind of last bit of time here for kind of open-ended questions, like just questions you have about music career, music business, or anything like that. Nathan, you got your hand up?
Yes. No, thank you for all this really helpful information from everyone. This has been Really, really helpful. Also, I'm a little bit overwhelmed by all of this information, if I'm being honest, since I'm such a small artist. I don't really have any of those things like live streaming or a following or any of that. So I guess the one question that I have is like, for artists that don't really have anything going on right now, is what's the first thing that we should try doing? Is it like trying to hop onto the live streaming, or just I don't know. I'm a little bit anxiety ridden. But also, the second question I had was about websites that I wanted to follow up with you on through the email, because I also want to make a personal email domain, but I don't know what website to use. Like MailChimp, Wix, Google. Anyway, those are my two questions.
Can I?
Well,
Oh, so sorry, Simon. You
no,
should
go for it. Please jump in.
I'd like to speak to that first question because I definitely feel you. Because last year was my first year as an artist full time, so it's definitely really overwhelming. The advice I gave to anyone is that do the thing you can do most consistently, and you'll find that once you do one thing, you'll figure out what you yourself feel really comfortable doing, what you can do like regularly. Like that's really important, and most importantly, what fulfills you, and like what you excel at and communicating as an artist. Because once you figure out what you excel at and what you can do with like you know, do for yourself, that's when you can delegate to a team. Like I can't stress that enough. Like I have folks who help me do what I do. Even though I can do everything, I don't do everything. So when you first start out, just do the thing you can do most consistently. And most importantly, you're gonna fail and you're gonna learn. So don't be afraid of failure. Like for example, with TikTok, I started doing TikTok and I failed at it. Like I was like making beats and they were super complex, and then I just got so tired and burnt out, so I had to take a break. But then I talked to Kenneth, and Kenneth inspired me to do TikTok again. He shared with me his experiences like creating for the platform. I hopped on again, and I figured out my niche for TikTok. And you can't really do that unless you really go for it over and over again. And that's why I always want to say like just try out different things, and you'll find the thing that works for you and what works for your artist brand and what works for your life. So that's my advice. And then yeah, websites. Google domain is also a good way to get a domain for your email. So I like that one. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. It definitely can feel overwhelming. Like there's so much to do all at once. I would say there's no need to do everything all at once and to do everything like at an excellent level all at once. Like there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. Most of the time when I like work with artists, what I say is like figure out what your ultimate goals are. Like figure out like those very precise goals of things you're trying to achieve, and then work backwards from there. Figure out the steps that actually get you to that spot. So for example, I know some artists here who hate social media. Like they just can't stand it. They don't like being on there. It's a waste of their time. And I'm like, if you hate it, then don't do it. Like it's just a tool to get to a goal. It's not the goal itself, unless your goal is to get a job like working for Coca-Cola doing their social or something like that. Like if your goal is to be a performing artist, then do what performing artists do, which is perform and find as many opportunities to perform as possible. If your goal is to work in production and do audio engineering, then study that, work with people in that field and kind of figure out the path to get there. Also, like never lose sight that as an artist, your first and foremost responsibility is to your craft, like developing your art and becoming the best that you can at it, and then finding ways to challenge yourself to grow even more. I love the fact that like when we were hopping on waiting for folks to jump in, like Tony was just riffing on like his synth, like it just like it and one of the things he said, Tony, it was just like that it got you out of the box in terms of like writing, like because it was a different type of instrument. And it definitely resonates with me. Like I've been playing bass for 30 years now, which makes me sound super old. But like one of the joys that I found this year during the pandemic was like buying a guitar and just playing on it and just like figuring out like, wow, I actually really, really like playing the guitar and learning to try and play songs by ear and then writing on that instrument as opposed to my first instrument. Or I'm a very, very terrible and mediocre keyboard player, but sometimes I'll hop on there and play because I realize it was a way to challenge myself and get to that eventual goal, which is like, I want to be that creator. So like figure out like what that destination is and kind of work out those steps. If you don't know what that destination is, then it's okay to try a lot of different things. On the business side, like there are a few critical things that you do want to do to absolutely protect yourself, to protect your creative rights. Bao is actually going to be hosting a session in April, one of our artist think tank sessions on kind of like the band 101 of the kind of critical things that you like. If you're just not sure where to start, he's going to do a great overview on like how to get started with your career and making sure that you have all the things lined up. So I would highly encourage you to do that one. But also, like if you're not sure, like hit us up anytime. You can reach out. Like we're very, very accessible. You can email us if you're like, hey, I only have so much time. What should I be working on? And we can help you out there as well.
Okay. No, thank you. And just to get your thoughts on it too, do you also recommend Google domain as a way to start websites, or like Tony suggested, or do you have any other thoughts on how to start a website?
Oh, there's like a ton of tools out there. And I guess it depends on your comfort level with like web design and creating something like that. Like the nice thing about sites like Wix or Squarespace is that it's like an all-in-one package. Like they have very locked in templates. So like you don't have to know any coding whatsoever. That's certainly an option. And almost any of those like all-in-one options will come with a free domain and help you route everything to your email for you. I have a little bit of familiarity with building sites. So Google Domains I like because it's like cheap, and then you can kind of direct your domain anywhere, like to whatever host you choose. I know a lot of people like WordPress a lot as well. Like I was a WordPress user for a long, long time until one of our board members turned me on to Squarespace, and I'm like, oh, it's way easier. I don't have to do any updates. Like I could just create a site there. So it's not too bad. But for the most part, those things are going to be fairly affordable, and you can usually do a monthly version of it and kind of start out with like a smaller package. And if you need like additional bandwidth, pages, features, you can always upgrade.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, gotcha. Okay, thank you. It's just I'm trying to start a MailChimp thing and it's complicated. At least it's complicated to me because I don't understand any of this stuff. But no, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Other folks have other questions?
Yes. Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks again, Simon, for dropping fire and wisdom. Hello. I had a real talk question for everyone, which is pricing yourself. Because I know we talked about like, you can negotiate all these things, but what is a good, I guess, like price to set yourself for virtual concerts of like 30 minutes? Like what is considered good versus like what is considered, outrageous. I guess I don't know. It just feels like the Wild Wild West right now. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That's such a good question. And I'm not sure how to answer that because we're all doing virtual concerts now, but previously we used how many heads we can get in the door.
And did you gauge that by like, how did you gauge that?
You mean like before you play any shows at all, you won't know
Yeah,
a
like
number?
how do you gauge how many people were? Mhm.
I think one, you can get all your friends to promise you they're going to come and pay for the tour. That's your very first show ever. And after that very first show, you have a number, you have a rough number. And that's like your guaranteed draw, right? But virtual shows, I'm not sure now.
You can actually do the digital equivalent of that. Like whoever is hosting the virtual event, maybe it's even your own, like you set up your own setup and you could just track the analytics on that and kind of use that as a baseline if you want to use like audience as a way to do it. If it's your very, very first one, you can also use social following, web traffic, any kind of analytics you have from that to kind of position yourself. It is always going to be tougher, like in the beginning, like as you're starting out, especially if it's like your first few shows, because generally speaking, the longer you do it, the more engaged consistently that your audience will have with your various channels. So you can tend to price yourself a little higher. I would say like virtual events, I've seen the range go from free, like just hey, this is a free event that we're doing, to the most recently I did an event with someone, they charged $85,000 for 40 minutes. And it was only like just, no one was allowed to record it. No one was allowed to screen cap it. It was like very like set up, but they were also like, very, very well established. So the range is like all over the place. And as far as like pricing your own worth, it's like, I would say like, if you are kind of in that earlier stage, you probably want to get as many opportunities as possible. So try and and I would say just accept as many as possible, even if you're kind of at the lower end of the range, and just to kind of build an audience, to get experience, to really like fine tune your process and see like what your audio setup is, what your video setup is, which, because, live streaming, you're gonna, that's a part of the deal now as well. But for artists who are doing pretty well, like pretty consistently, you can usually get at least a few $100 per gig. And that's just like if you have like a modest sized audience and you're doing it pretty consistently.
That's such a good question.
Yeah. Other folks here in the room want to like share their own experiences?
I can chime in again. Same friend with the same who runs the booking agency. I was asking him about rates and things, and so the way that their agency works is, whether you're a company or an individual, you hire this company and then they kind of provide the artists. And he says that like the way their pricing is set up is that each performer roughly gets $300 an hour. And so, mind you, this is the Bay Area where money situation might be different where you are. But like that's the branding, I guess, that they're known for. Like they're classy, it's elegant, it's kind of higher end. And so that was just helpful for me to understand, like, and so therefore the booking agency is charging more than that because they're taking something above the 300 an hour. So if that figure is helpful, my advice, I guess, like we've been fortunate to do corporate events and some, just regular people events during COVID. But my advice is just kind of, I think someone mentioned this before. I think Simon was mentioning, you can kind of gracefully tease out what people's idea of a budget is, because like the same, like we've kind of charged the same rate across different things. And for some people, like, oh, that's a lot. And for some people, it's like, okay, that's fine. And so if you just kind of, do you have an idea of how much you want to spend on entertainment? That's kind of my way of asking that. And then usually people will say, oh, okay, yeah, I have 300, or some, if you're really lucky, like we've had a couple where they're just like, just tell me what you want. And then you just, which is, those are the ideal ones to have. So
I think that's a great point. Like, don't be afraid to ask. And there are definitely very graceful ways of asking too. Like even saying like, what's your budget range? And if you have a range, they have like maybe a couple different numbers in mind, and you can choose to aim towards the high end, the middle, the bottom, whatever it is that you're comfortable with, that you would like. And knowing that it's kind of a relationship that you want to engage in. Because, if you ask for way too much, then it might be damaging to the relationship if you don't have like an existing kind of trust built and rapport built with them. And if it's, too low, you don't want to, you don't want to shortchange yourself. The other thing to think about is like the person you're working with, the type of event will differ too. Like corporate events, absolutely, you can charge more for it. Usually higher education as well. So colleges and universities tend to have pretty decent budgets for student activities. Although this last year, those budgets vary all over the place. for that kind of thing. I would say typically for a college event, whether it's in person or virtual, because they set their budgets a year in advance, so they oftentimes will have funds available unless they've had to do some kind of drastic COVID response measure. You can usually get at least $1,000 for a performance. Like I found that pretty consistent across the board, up to probably about 5,000 or 6,000 for artists who are just getting started. So like booking colleges can be very good. Some people, they make a living just playing as an independent artist on the college circuit. So there's a lot of ways to like jump into that world. I will also mention that some colleges rely on a very, very specific booking platforms. And in order to book through those colleges, you actually have to become a member of those platforms. And that usually can cost a couple $100 a year. So like, if you're interested in that, like you can follow up with me and I can get you set up with those different organizations. But virtually it's kind of like opened up a lot. And the other thing to consider is like, if it is like a higher ed event, if it's like for a club, you're not going to get as much if it's for something that's open to like a broader student base. So if it is a club that's hosting an event, like you got to think, is it for just their members, or are they hosting it as part of like a cultural awareness event or a special like rally or something like that? If it's like a bigger, larger scale event, they're going to have a bigger budget to go along with that. Bao, I think, were you going to add something?
No, I was waving goodbye.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, because I know, like, for me right now, this year has been a lot of like, I'm breaking down the stigma of, oh, you can't make money money with music, and like really breaking that within me. So thank you for giving me these like actionable steps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, and that's the thing, is like a lot of this stuff is like shrouded in mystery. Like artists very seldomly like reveal what they're paid, or like how those arrangements are, like what kind of arrangements are available. And that's oftentimes just like the workplace is set up to do this, where it feels uncomfortable to ask coworkers like how much they make. It benefits the employer, it benefits the venues, because it doesn't allow employees or artists to organize and say like, oh, that's how much they gave you, because like that's how much I get this, right? Like we should be able to like have folks that we trust, and this, we want to create a space for that, just say like, hey, for real, like this is some of the things. Like I will mention, like, this isn't, I haven't seen this in like a digital space yet. There might be promoters that are doing this, but it was very common. And when we were doing in-person events, that people had pay to play opportunities. Now, pay to play is like the bane of my existence. It's basically like you have to pay. They'll say like, oh, here's a really big event. You have to sell a minimum number of tickets. And if you don't sell that minimum number, you got to pay the difference. There's actually a fairly big arts organization that would do this, and they would say like, oh, we have these special high-end events and that kind of thing. But it's a way to like undercut artists. And, a lot of like really famous venues will actually go with this particular method and say like, well, if you want to get on the show, if you want to get on our gig, we have such a big name, you got to do this. But I oftentimes recommend against this. The pay to play setup is also really common with established artists. So it's called, in the industry, they typically name it as like a buy-on act. And a buy-on act is like, hey, I really want to open up for this act. They seem like a really established artist, but those artists will oftentimes charge opening acts money to play their shows or to go on tour with them. So this has become a more common practice, especially in the last 10 years, because artist pay has been kind of steadily declining. So if you, for example, standard rate for touring for a month on an artist that's playing mid-size venues, so we're talking like 250 to 500-ish capacity venues, a typical 30-day tour on a buy-on act, you would probably be paying about $15,000 to pay with that with that artist. That artist also will not give you a single cent from any ticket sales or any money that comes in through the door. you're in debt to them. They will not share lodging or oftentimes the other kinds of like meals or things like that. You're on your own for all of that. And buy-on acts actually usually get shorter set times and often are not allowed to, like if you're playing in a full band, they oftentimes don't want you to set up with your full band. They just want you to be like an acoustic duo or something like that to play as doors are opening and before the show starts. This is a really, really common practice. And a lot of artists do this because they try and say like, well, I want to be able to say I opened up for so-and-so, but most promoters can smell buy-on acts a mile away. Like it's very, very common practice. And sometimes you just want to do it because you think like it opens up the relationship, but this is just something to be very, very aware of. Like if you are asking to join a show with somebody and they want you to open for them, like figure out try and get the exact set time. Like what time are you playing? Because if you're playing before the show starts, you're going to be a buy-on act. If you have to sell like 50 tickets or 100 tickets, you're a buy-on act. It's not always like terminal to your career. I knew a band who they spent $50,000 a year touring. Spent it, didn't make it. They spent it like opening for other acts, and they did this for about 2 years. But they knew the acts they really wanted to play with because they said like that's the exact audience we need to reach, and it got them to a point where they built up an audience. Then they toured on their own, and then they got a pretty decent major label deal. And then the last time I was in touch with them, they were doing an artist in residency at the Hard Rock Casino, doing like basically all their things were paid for like 6 months. So you can invest in it strategically, but it's very, very expensive. And most of the time, that's a very rare occurrence.
True that.
Yeah. Crystal says, it exploits starting out artists. And that's true. Like, unfortunately, there's a whole industry of people in the music industry that exploits artists that are starting out by charging artists for services. And so like, we're talking about booking tonight. Like typically the traditional booking agent relationship was that if you got a booking agent, they would take a percentage, usually something in the neighborhood of like 10 to 15% of your overall cut. But there's a lot of booking agents that will work off of a regular retainer per show. And, there's pros and cons to that as well, but it's just something to be aware of. Managers typically would take, in the realm of 10 to 20% of an artist intake, but many managers now are asking for a monthly retainer, like a minimum monthly payment, no matter if they brought you a single cent or not. And a lot of these artists will say like, are pretty established, like, or those managers who have like worked with, say, Grammy award-winning artists or someone who's making a lot of headlines. And then once they stop working with that really big act, they leverage that relationship and say like, oh, I used to rep this person. So if you want me to do the same thing for you, you got to pay me so and so much every single month. Unfortunately, I know a number of people that do that. And they're just basically preying on artists who like want to, do something that they love and the artists kind of think like, well, hey, that person had success with so-and-so. Maybe if I invest in that, I'll get that. But oftentimes that's not going to be the case. They'll take your money. They'll make you sign a contract saying success is not guaranteed. And then they'll probably be paying more attention to the artists where they're on a percentage retainer with.
Simon, what do you think about label services and management services then? Like for that, as opposed to finding a manager who's going to charge that. How about like finding someone who's going to like do those things for you? Like obviously, like success isn't guaranteed for a lot of artists, but there's some people who can like, I don't know, get you to where you want to be for a price. What do you think about these new label services and management services out there?
No, that's a great question. And I think that you got to be real cautious of them. It's a new pay to play paradigm, right? Like someone's going to make you pay a certain amount to pitch you to labels or to kind of other opportunities or to ask for that minimum payment. I would say like just be really, really cautious of those kinds of things. Like they better have like a stellar track record. They like, and they should be able to, you should feel comfortable and they should be comfortable with you talking to any artist that they've ever worked with to prove like, hey, like this person's legit, they do really great work. The other part of it is that like, I'm not saying like all these services are bad. I think there's a lot of good intentioned people, but they just can't always deliver. So like, but most of the people that can deliver will come in a point in your career where you already are building momentum for yourself. Like this is the irony of it. Like the more of a fan base that you build, the more momentum you build in your career, the less you kind of need somebody to open doors for you. But that's the only point they're interested in working with you, because they're like, oh, this person's blown up. I can make some money here. Very few managers want to like jump in really, really early on in the career, just because there's no money to be made. And that's why they're charging these, because of retainers. So it's like, I would say like, figure out what it is like that. If you can get as much information as possible with their track record, with the relationships they've built and that sort of thing. Oftentimes it's sad in this industry, but oftentimes it's like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably kind of is. And the other part of this is that, like build up and own as much of it as you can. Like, and this is why, like, although I definitely advocate using social media as a tool, I'm always like, own your contact list, own your website as much as you can. Like you want to own that fan relationship, because that's going to ultimately be leverage that you could bring to the table. So if you are in a situation where you're negotiating with a label, most of them don't care that much about your social media following. That's just an initial check. They'll like see if you have momentum going on, but most of them will ask like the size of your contact list, your physical mailing address list, your email contacts, and so on. So like the more you can build that up, the more you can kind of leverage that. And same thing with if someone's charging a flat rate fee for you, you can oftentimes renegotiate those terms if you're in a better position. Say like, hey, I already have all this stuff going on. I already had, I'm getting playlisted, I'm getting press. So like it makes your job easier pitching me to services. Can you give me a different rate? Or are you willing to switch to a percentage like revenue share instead?
Yeah, I want to emphasize, if you're looking into a service like that, talk to as many people they've worked with as you can, just to hear their experience. And then you can kind of do the math to see if it's worth it to take that risk. But the upfront payments is like such a slippery, such a scary part of the business.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions?
Y'all can hit me up outside of this whenever you want, and I'll happy to help with any other questions you guys have.
All right. So before we close out, I want to mention that next month we have a special guest. We're going to be in conversation with Wendy Parr. Now, Wendy Parr she's probably one of the most notable vocal coaches in the world. She's got like a ridiculous client list of folks. She's probably most notable for coaching and working with Regina Spektor, but she also like has done the same thing for Zoe Kravitz, The Strokes, Lee Hum Wong, a ton of people. I mean, she's absolutely incredible. And so she's going to be coming in here to offer advice and tips, but we're also partnering with her. Our foundation is going to pay for a 6-week mentorship for one of you to go in and actually get direct coaching from Wendy. And she does a program called The Ride. The Ride basically helps prepare you everything from like understanding the tools that you need to providing you with resources to helping you with your overall branding. So your sound, your design, your artwork, video concepts, that sort of thing. And in addition to providing things like voice lessons, and to also be a pathway into getting a nomination for a Grammy. So she's one of the nominators. She can get you nominated and possibly balloted for the Grammys as well. I'm putting a link in here in the chat box. So if you want to apply for this program, it doesn't cost you a dime. We're paying all the costs. Our foundation's taking care of it for you, and we're in partnership with her on this program, and we can also help. So like, earlier we talked about like paying for people for services and that sort of thing. Wendy's one of the great people in here. She's helped a ton of people in their career, and she has a really great holistic approach. So you don't want to miss that. That's, again, these artist think tank sessions are on the third Thursday of every month. And then in April, Bao is going to be presenting as well for that kind of band 101. I'll be following up with the links to these events if you want to register. And we just, we love seeing you. We love just having these like very candid conversations with you about developing your artist career. And so reach out anytime.
Yeah, I think some of y'all are on the ACN songwriter producer group, but I held the same workshop, my test version of the same workshop for that small group. And it's basically starting a business entity so that you can manage your music and your artistic career in a more legit way. It saves you a ton of money for, just writing off your expenses to treat your art as a business, and doesn't need to require a gigantic financial investment. So that'll be the workshop that I have in April. It also covers resale licenses, so you can buy merch without paying sales tax.
There you go. Awesome. So much of it. And then also Tony noted in the chat, worked with Wendy as well and have taken the ride. So has a lot of great information there. So just really cool. And we're constantly going to be expanding these kinds of opportunities. We're going to be having an entertainment lawyer come in the near future as well to help out with all your IP related things, like how to get copyrights, trademarks, how to earn every cent of royalties you can, whether it's sound exchange or through performing rights organizations. So he's going to be kind of helping do that walkthrough. It's a great way to pair up with Bao's session as well to kind of figure out like that legal end of things. And the attorney is also going to be providing free advice, which it's not easy to get. Like attorneys be expensive. So like it's a great opportunity to kind of get some work there. And he also has extensive experience in pitching to labels and management. So if you have additional questions, he's a great person for that. If you have other things in the future that you would like to see, questions, if you want to go in depth in any particular topic, please email us, let us know so that we can continue holding this space and making it serve your needs as well. So this is an open conversation. We have a list of suggested ideas, but we also always want to make sure that it is as useful as possible to all of you. So thank you again for joining us tonight, and we'll catch you all soon. Peace.
Hey guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
I think Simon and I
Thank
are
you.
very modest, and so we never think to ask that you guys share the Slants Foundation events with people at the end of these events. But if you appreciate this content, introduce the Slants Foundation and our efforts to your network, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that reminder, Bao. So yeah, if you like what we're doing, let other folks know, and if you want to be a part in other ways, let us know. All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank
you,
you,
Simon.
Guys, good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.